Once upon a time there lived a woman named Mama Esther. She was a widow, a mother of 3, and a vegetable seller at the Obalende Market. Life had been cruel since her husband's passing, leaving her to struggle daily just to put food on the table. Mama Esther woke up every morning before the city even stretched its arms. She would tie her faded wrapper around her waist, balance a heavy basket of vegetables on her head, and walk through the noisy streets of Obalende Market. She had no husband, no savings, and no one to lean on, only 3 hungry children waiting at home. Every day was a battle, and yet, she never let hardship steal her kindness. She was exhausted. Her legs ached. But she had no choice. This was survival. One afternoon, as she sits by her wooden stall, counting her meager earnings, she notices a small boy sitting by the roadside, his shoulders shaking as he sobs into his hands. Mama Esther watched the boy closely. His school uniform was dusty, his shoes worn out, and his face buried in his hands. She gets up, walks over, and kneels beside him. "My son, why are you crying?" The boy sniffles and looks up, his lips trembling. "They sent me out of the exam hall. I couldn't pay my school fees." Mama Esther felt her chest tighten. She had seen suffering before, but something about this child's tears felt different. Mama Esther stands up, reaches into the fold of her wrapper, and pulls out a small bundle of crumpled naira notes. It is all she has left. She hesitated. This money was meant for food. Her children would go hungry. But as she looked into the boy's eyes, she knew there was only one choice. And so, she gently takes David's hand and leads him to the school principal's office. She places the money on his desk. "Are you his mother?" the principal asked. "No, but he is my son today," answered Mama Esther. And just like that, David was allowed back into the exam hall. But neither of them knew this single act of kindness would change their lives forever. Years pass. David, now a teenager, studies relentlessly, determined to honor Mama Esther's sacrifice. He studied in the dim glow of streetlights, sat under trees reading his books, and refused to let poverty define his future. Through his hard work, David won a scholarship and received an admission letter from a prestigious university. He graduated at the top of his class. And then, he built an empire. At one of his conferences, David, now a wealthy executive, delivers a speech before thousands of people. He told his story, the story of a poor widow who had given him everything when she had nothing. The audience wept. The video went viral. The entire country was moved. That evening, David looks out of his mansion's balcony, deep in thought. But something was missing. He had everything, except the woman who made it all possible. His mind raced with memories. The woman who had saved him, where was she now? Was she okay? Had life been kind to her? David had built an empire, yet his heart felt empty. The woman who had lifted him when he had nothing, he owed her everything. Now, it was time to find her. He turns abruptly and picks up his phone. He calls his assistant, "Samuel, I need you to help me find someone." "Of course, sir. Who are we looking for?" David closes his eyes for a moment, remembering her kind, wrinkled face, the sweat on her forehead as she sold vegetables in the scorching heat. Her name is Mama Esther. She used to sell vegetables in Obalende Market years ago. She saved me when I was just a poor boy. Samuel was silent for a moment. He could hear the emotion in his boss's voice. "I'll start the search immediately, sir. I'll send men to the market first thing in the morning. David exhales, his heart pounding. He knows he won't rest until he finds her. The next morning, David's team arrives at Obalende Market, a place he hadn't seen in decades. But something is wrong, it is not the same market he remembers. Obalende Market had changed. The old stores had been replaced by modern shops, and many of the familiar traders were long gone. David, dressed simply in jeans and a white button-down shirt, walks through the market himself, asking around. "Excuse me, Mama. Do you know a woman named Mama Esther? She used to sell vegetables here years ago." The woman squints at him, then shakes her head. "Oh, my son, many people have come and gone from this market. It is hard to remember." David's heart sinks, but he doesn't give up. He continues asking. Hours passed. He asked traders, shop owners, even beggars on the streets. But no one seemed to know where Mama Esther was. Just as he is about to give up, a frail, elderly woman sitting under a tattered umbrella calls out to him. "Young man, you said you are looking for Mama Esther." David's heart leaps. "Yes. Do you know her?" "Oh, she left this market many years ago. Life became too hard for her. I heard she moved to a small village outside the city. But I don't know which one." David felt a mix of relief and frustration. She was alive, but where? David instructed his assistant Samuel, "We need to search every nearby village. I need to find her." Days pass. David and his team travel from village to village, asking questions, knocking on doors. And then, finally, they find a lead. An old man in a small, dusty village outside Ibadan finally gave them the answer they needed. "Oh, Mama Esther. Yes, I know her. She lives at the end of this road. But, my son, life has not been easy for her." David's heart clenches. He rushes down the dirt path, his expensive shoes kicking up dust. Then, he sees it, an old, crumbling shack. The sight made David's chest tighten. A small, collapsing hut, its roof patched with rusted metal sheets. Chickens wandered nearby. Clothes hung from a thin rope, swaying in the breeze. And then, he saw her. Sitting on a small stool outside the house was an old woman, her once strong body frail, her hands wrinkled from years of hard work. She was peeling cassava, her eyes tired. Mama Esther had aged. She looked weak. But she was still the same. David stops in his tracks, unable to move, his vision blurred by unshed tears. Then, he takes a deep breath and walks toward her. "Mama, do you remember me?" Mama Esther looks up, confused. She studies his face but doesn't recognize him. "My son. I am sorry. My eyes are not as sharp as they used to be." David's throat tightens. He kneels before her, his heart pounding. "It's me, Mama. The boy you saved years ago. The one you gave your last money to. You told me to do the same for someone else when I grew up." Mama Esther stares at him, and then, realization dawns. Her hands begin to tremble. "David, my God, is it really you?" David nods, tears streaming down his face. "Mama, I promised myself that if I ever made it, I would come back for you. And today, I'm here to fulfill that promise." Mama Esther covered her mouth, overwhelmed. She had given him everything when she had nothing. Now, he had come back for her. David gently takes her hands and presses them to his forehead. You saved my life, Mama. Now, let me save yours. David helps Mama Esther into his car. For the first time in years, she sits on a cushioned seat, staring in disbelief as they drive away from the poverty that had trapped her for so long. Mama Esther, who had spent her life struggling, was now being taken to a new world, a world of comfort, love, and abundance. As David takes her to his mansion, his staff welcome her warmly. She steps inside, her old sandals tapping against the marble floor. This is not for someone like me. Mama Esther whispered to David. Mama, this is your home now. Everything I have is because of you. Mama Esther sat on a plush chair, tears rolling down her cheeks. She had never imagined this day would come. David had wealth, fame, and power. But the greatest moment of his life was this, bringing home the woman who had saved him. Mama Esther holds his hands tightly, whispering a prayer of gratitude. As the sun sets over the city, Mama Esther sits silently in the luxurious guest room David prepared for her. Mama Esther had never seen such comfort in her life. She had spent years sleeping on a thin mat, listening to the sounds of the night, crickets, distant voices, and sometimes even hunger gnawing at her stomach. Now, she sat on the edge of a bed that felt softer than clouds. Mama Esther whispered a prayer, God, is this really happening? Tears rolled down her cheeks as she whispered prayers of gratitude. She had once given her last money to a crying boy. Now, that same boy had become the man who changed her fate. In another room, David sits at his desk, looking at an old notebook, his childhood journal. Inside, he had written a promise to himself as a young boy, one day, I will find Mama Esther and repay her kindness. David said to himself, smiling, I finally kept my promise. But David knew there was something else missing, her children. The next morning, David finds Mama Esther sitting by the garden, looking thoughtful. He sits beside her, offering her a warm cup of tea. Mama, do you have family? Children? Mama Esther sighs, looking down at her hands, her fingers trembling slightly. For the first time since her arrival, a shadow crossed Mama Esther's face. I had 3 children, but life took them far away from me. I don't even know where they are now. David's eyes widened in surprise. Mama Esther's children had once been the reason she struggled. She had fought every day to feed them, to send them to school. But when life became too difficult, they each left in search of better opportunities, promising to return. But none of them did. David places his hand over hers, his voice gentle. Mama, if they are out there, I will find them. Mama Esther shook her head, her voice breaking. No, my son. I don't want to be a burden to anyone. If they have forgotten me, then so be it. I have you now, and that is enough. David remains silent, but deep inside, he knows he must reunite Mama Esther with her children. That evening, David meets with Samuel, his assistant, in his private study. Samuel, I need you to track down Mama Esther's children. I don't care how long it takes, I need to find them. Samuel nodded and immediately began the search. Days turn into weeks, and one by one, the pieces start to fall into place. Mama Esther's eldest son, Michael, had moved to Kano, working as a laborer at a construction site. His once strong hands were now rough from years of hard labor, barely making enough to survive. Her second son, Joshua, had become a struggling mechanic in Port Harcourt, fixing cars for little pay, his dreams of a better life fading with every passing year. And her youngest daughter, Linda, was in Abuja, working as a cleaner in a restaurant, exhausted from long hours and meager wages. One by one, Samuel's team reaches out to them, telling them the truth they never expected to hear. For years, they had believed their mother was long gone. But now, they were being told she was alive, safe, and living with a man who owed her his entire life. On one quiet afternoon, David walks into the living room where Mama Esther is resting. She looks up, noticing the unusual smile on his face. "My son, what is it?" David kneels before her, taking her hands. "Mama, I found them." Mama Esther's eyes widen in shock, her breath hitching in her throat. "My children." Before she could process his words, the front doors opened, and there they stood. Michael, Joshua, and Linda step inside, their faces filled with tears and emotion. Mama Esther stares at them, her hands trembling as she struggles to stand. "Is it really you?" Michael rushes forward, falling to his knees before her, tears streaming down his face. "Mama, forgive me. I left, and I never came back." Joshua and Linda join him, sobbing, holding onto their mother's hands. Tears filled the room as mother and children reunited after years of separation. Mama Esther wept, touching their faces, holding them close. She had feared she would die alone, but now, her family was whole again. David watches from the side, his heart swelling with happiness. He had given her back the family she thought she had lost forever. "Now, Mama, you are truly home," David said softly. Days later, as Mama Esther enjoys the warmth of her family, she turns to David with a new purpose in her heart. "My son, I cannot sit in this house and enjoy this new life while there are others suffering as I once did. I want to help them." David smiled, knowing exactly what she meant. "Mama, I was waiting for you to say that. Let's do it." Together, they create the Mama Esther Foundation, an organization dedicated to helping widows and struggling women in the market, just as she had once been. Word spread quickly. The poor and forgotten heard of a foundation that provided loans, shelter, and education for their children. And at the center of it all was Mama Esther, once a struggling widow, now a beacon of hope for many. Months pass. The Mama Esther Foundation grows larger than anyone ever expected. Women from different parts of the country come seeking help, and none are turned away. Widows receive financial aid, children are sent back to school, and struggling traders are given a chance to build their businesses. In gratitude, one of the market women kneels before Mama Esther, holding her hands, tears streaming down her face. "Because of you, my son can return to school. Because of you, I can feed my children." But Mama Esther pulls her up and embraces her. "No, my daughter. It is because kindness always finds its way back." David watches from a distance, his heart filled with pride. He had not just changed one life, he had changed thousands. The seed of kindness that Mama Esther had planted years ago had grown into a mighty tree, one that provided shade for thousands. David and Mama Esther walked through the foundation's headquarters, watching as women and children receive support. Mama Esther smiles with tears in her eyes. "My son, this is bigger than I ever dreamed." David nodded, "And this is just the beginning, Mama." David had given Mama Esther a home, reunited her with her children, and ensured she never struggled again. But even in her new life of comfort, she remained the same, kind, humble, and always ready to give. Mama Esther's children, Michael, Joshua, and Linda, are now deeply involved in the foundation, following in their mother's footsteps. For the first time in years, they were truly a family again, not just in name, but in purpose. Mama Esther had once been a forgotten woman in the market, struggling to survive. Now, she was a name that carried meaning across the nation, a symbol of love, sacrifice, and kindness. One evening, as the sun sets, she calls David to her side. "My son, come sit with me." David sits beside her, holding her hands gently. "I am proud of you. I am proud of the man you have become. But most of all, I am proud that you never forgot where you came from." David's eyes fill with tears, and he squeezes her hands. "Mama, everything I am is because of you." That night, Mama Esther closed her eyes with a peaceful heart, knowing she had fulfilled her purpose. Years later, the foundation expands, reaching more cities and villages, ensuring that no widow or struggling child is left behind. David continues to run the foundation, honoring Mama Esther's memory. Her story became a lesson that echoed through generations. Schools, churches, and communities told the tale of a poor widow who gave her last money to a child in need, and how that one act of kindness changed countless lives. Because kindness is never wasted. What you give today may return to you in ways you never imagined. This story teaches us an important lesson. Never underestimate the power of kindness. A simple act can change the course of someone's life. Success is not just about what you achieve, but how you lift others along the way. No matter how hard life gets, always choose to help when you can. What you give may come back to you in ways beyond your imagination. Mama Esther gave when she had nothing, and in the end, she received more than she ever dreamed. Dear champions, we hope this story touched your heart. If Mama Esther's kindness inspired you, let us all strive to do good whenever we can. Please take a moment to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to this channel so we can continue bringing you more inspiring African folktales. Comment below, what was your favorite part of the story? Have you ever experienced a kindness that changed your life? Let's keep the conversation going. Remember, one act of kindness can change the world. Kindness is like a seed. When you plant it, it grows into a mighty tree that shelters many. Until next time, stay blessed and keep spreading love.